If you follow my channel for a while now, you might have realized that there's one particular genre of video games that I like to talk about a lot. And if you read the title of the video, I'm sure you already know that that genre is platformers. Platformers have had a special place in my heart since I first experienced how fun it was to run around jumping on enemies' heads and collecting stars in Mario 64 as a young lad. To the child version of me, that was the definition of fun. Now you might think that, like is often the case with many things we really enjoyed as children, I would have grown out of the platformer genre and moved on to bigger and better things, but that is the furthest thing from the truth, at least in my case. Over the years, I've only grown to appreciate the platformer genre more and more, and to me that speaks to how truly great the genre is. However, even though I've talked about many different platformer games and the various elements that make them up, I recently realized that I had yet to make a video detailing what it is that I specifically like about the genre as a whole, and that brings us to today. In this video, I'm going to lay out some of the main reasons why I really like platformers, and hopefully give you guys an idea of why I like to talk about them so much. But before we get into it, I figured I should probably tell you guys what a platformer actually is in case there's anyone out there who is unfamiliar with the concept. So a platformer is a game where the main goal is to get your character from point A, or the starting point of the level, to point B, which is usually some sort of goal or collectible item. The genre gets its name from the unique way the levels are designed, typically featuring many platforms of various heights, placements, and distances from one another. However, even though the genre is known as platformer, platforms aren't the only obstacle you'll have to face in a platformer game, and sometimes they aren't even the most prevalent type of obstacle. Things like enemies, hazards, and bosses will also often block your path to the goal of a specific level, but at least in my opinion, these other types of obstacles usually serve to make the platforming more challenging and fun, so I guess you could say they are an aspect of the term platformer. To use a widely known game as an example, the original Super Mario Bros. For the NES is a platform-style game because the game focuses on running through levels and jumping across gaps of varying difficulty. But enough about the definition, let's move on to why I personally enjoy the platformer genre. The first thing that makes platformers really special to me personally, and I touched on this a little bit earlier, is nostalgia. I know that's not an aspect of the genre from a gameplay standpoint, but I felt like if I didn't mention it, I wouldn't be giving you guys the whole picture. I was an early 90s baby, so like many other kids that grew up around that time, a lot of the games that I played as a kid and still have fond memories of to this day were platformers like Banjo-Kazooie, Mario, Spyro, Sly Cooper, among others. And I'd be lying to you guys if I said that nostalgia had absolutely nothing to do with my love for platformers. As everyone out there is most likely aware, nostalgia is a very powerful force that can sway your opinions on something to the side of fondness, even if you wouldn't necessarily like that specific thing if you discovered it for the first time as an adult. It's that warm, fuzzy feeling you get when you dig out your old Power Ranger toys from your garage and play with them for the first time in years. That really great, almost childlike joy is exactly the same feeling I get when I play a platformer, and that definitely makes them even more special in my eyes for sure. I mean, who doesn't love a little bit of nostalgia every once in a while? My whole channel is pretty much built on it, for crying out loud. However, when it comes to platformers, I don't think that my rose-tinted goggles are clouding my judgment too much. I've reviewed a lot of games that I played and loved as a kid over the course of my YouTube career, if you can call it that, and if you've seen some of those reviews, you know that I'm often pretty critical of even the games I really liked as a kid. Sometimes playing them again as an adult makes me realize that I was wrong about how fun a game was when I thought back on my time playing it as a kid. But that hasn't been the case for most of the platformers that I reviewed in the past, as well as some of the platformers I played for the first time as an adult. I do of course have a ton of nostalgia for platformers, and that does make me really enjoy them, but I don't believe that nostalgia is the sole reason I like them. And that just so happens to lead very nicely into the next point I'd like to mention about platformers, and that is that they are fun for all ages in my opinion. The typical association people make with platformers like the Mario series and the Kirby series is that they are for kids. And while it is true that the target audience is most likely children, and the genre is probably mainly played by children, I don't think you need to be a child to enjoy platformers. For example, Mario Odyssey came out in 2017, and I still thoroughly enjoyed the game even though I am now a fully grown adult. But what is it about platformers that makes them different from other games that are traditionally targeted at kids? Well, in my opinion, it comes mostly from the amount of player choice that exists in the platformer genre, specifically when it comes to collectibles and progression. Since we just were talking about it a moment ago, let's use Mario Odyssey as an example. In order to move on from one world to the next in that game, you need to get a certain amount of the main collectible in Mario Odyssey, moons. Now, which moons you get and how hard they are to acquire doesn't matter at all to the game. So if you're a kid who hasn't really developed the skills and timing required to get some of the harder moons, you can just focus on the easier ones and still complete the game, while on the other hand, adults who find the easier moons to be rather trivial have the ability to choose to challenge themselves to go for the harder ones, and even try collecting all the moons. And this level of choice is something that we see echoed across the platformer genre, and that is one of the big reasons why I believe platformers should be considered games that are fun for all ages to play. Another reason, albeit a much simpler one, is that platformers just have an air of fun about them that, in my opinion, transcends generations in a lot of cases. I've always been of the opinion that we shouldn't let our preconceived notions about something hinder our ability to enjoy that specific thing, and that is most definitely the case with platformers. If you've only ever thought of the genre as a bunch of kids' games, consider giving one a shot. Who knows, maybe you'll find platformers just as fun as I do. But what is it about platformers that make them so fun to me? Another masterful transition into our next topic, collectibles. If you're familiar with the platformer genre, then you're also no doubt familiar with the concept of collectibles. The way collectibles typically work in a platform-style game is that they can be found throughout a level, sometimes in very obvious places, and sometimes in very difficult-to-reach places. How much of each difficulty of collectible there is depends on the game, and often determines the overall degree of difficulty. In my opinion, collectibles go hand in hand with platformers and serve to level up the experience to another degree of fun. Take, for example, the evolution of the Mario series. Super Mario Bros. For the NES started out with no real collectibles, at least ones that matter, and the series gradually evolved into one that's main focus could arguably be collecting things. Now, why is this? Well, in the original Super Mario Bros., there's only one goal per level, to get to the end. But in later games, each level has a myriad of goals spread throughout, like find the moon hidden in the sand, get the moon from beating the boss, get the moon from growing those weird seed things, etc., etc. Why have only one goal per level when you can have 2, 5, 10, or however many moons there are in a typical level of Mario Odyssey? And it's collectibles that facilitate the number of different goals, aka fun things to do in a level and the game as a whole, as well as provide a ton of variety and exploration to the game. But the variety, exploration, and depth they bring to platformers is not the only reason I like collectibles. Personally, I'm just the kind of guy who really likes collecting things, be it in a game or in real life. The great feeling of accomplishment I get when I look back at a level where I got everything possible is something that, no matter how many times I experience it, never gets dulled. And platformers are a genre of games where I can revisit that feeling to my heart's content, which is something that always keeps me coming back, even to games that I've beaten in the past. If there are any fellow collectible nuts out there, you know what I'm talking about. But of course, collectibles aren't the only thing that I find fun about platformers. I mean, if they were, I probably couldn't call it my favorite genre. Another thing that I always love about a good platformer are the movement aspects and the level of technical prowess they can often draw out of truly great players at the game. We've been talking about Mario this whole video, so let's stick with that for this example as well. Think about Mario 64. You can get through the game just fine by moving through every level very slowly, methodically, and with very low risk and easy jumps, but you also have the ability to do some crazy difficult and fast tricks that are really fun to pull off. I mean, go play a level of Mario 64 the way you normally would, then go watch the speedrun of that same level and see how differently it can be completed. While there are typically some glitches used, most of the difference is going to come in the form of how well speedrunners are able to move quickly and accurately through a level, and it's precisely this ability to get more skilled at the game that makes movement so fun in many platformers. Now, of course, I'm no speedrunner, but I do really enjoy the feeling of getting better at the game than I feel as I progress further and further and my movement gets tighter and tighter. In some genres of games, it can be hard to tell when you're not doing well, but in platformers, you usually know because you'll fall, or sometimes even die if you don't do something correctly. So on the flip side of that, it's also very easy to tell when you're getting better, because you will stop dying so much and start to get past things that would have given you trouble a few levels back. It may not be on the level of speedrunners of the game, but in my opinion, getting better at a game, even a small capacity, is always a fun thing to experience, and movement in platformers is a very easy way to experience that. And the final thing about platformers that I'd like to talk about in this video is the music. It wouldn't be an ACK video if I didn't somehow find a way to slip game music in there, right? In my opinion, the platformer genre is one of the genres with the best soundtracks on average. So many of my absolute favorite soundtracks come from platformer games like Banjo-Kazooie, Spyro, Donkey Kong Country, Kirby, Mario, you get the picture. But what is it about platformer soundtracks that I like so much? Well, that could honestly be a topic for a whole video, but I'll give you guys the short version this time around. The main thing that I love about platformer soundtracks is just how fun they always are. In most platformers, there's never a time where I'm not having fun, and that is often thanks to the upbeat, sometimes a little wacky, and always just plain good music that is constantly playing in the background. I mean, you can't tell me you didn't crack a smile every time you entered a new level in Banjo-Kazooie and heard the music for the first time. And if you did, I would refuse to believe you because the music is just that fun in my opinion. And that kind of sums up how I feel about platformers as a whole. They're just fun, plain and simple. They're a type of game that, in my opinion, can't help but be tons of fun because that's just the way they're built, and that's why I like them so much. I know that nowadays the platformer genre is in a period of unpopularity when compared to the golden age that was the 80s and 90s, but I don't think that that means platformers are any less fun now than they were back then. If anything, they've only gotten more fun as the years have gone by, and developers have gotten better at making platformers. Now, of course, the things that I talked about in this video aren't the only things that I like about platformers. If I made a video about literally everything I like about them, it would be super long, so I stuck to just 5 main things this time around. There's still a lot of stuff about them that I would love to talk about, but didn't get the chance in this video, so let me know if you'd be interested in a part 2 where I go into some other things about the genre. But anyway, thanks so much for watching all the way to the end of the video. It always means a lot to me, and I hope you enjoyed it. If by chance you did enjoy the video, consider giving it a like. It's always greatly appreciated and helps me out a ton. And if you want to see more content like this in the future, consider subscribing as well. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and I'll see you in the next one. Ack out. Platformer? I hardly know her. Am I right? I'm sorry.